You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company. I'm your host, Tim Dooner. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever left a bad review before? Maybe it was on Amazon. Your seller took forever to ship, or an item arrived damaged. Perhaps on Airbnb. Your host never cleaned the bathroom. Or perhaps on Yelp. Maybe Jenny, your waitress, was a natural-born jerk, and your food took forever to arrive. Well, Dock411 is an app that allows truckers to rate shipping facilities. Truckers that may have a lot of time on their hands if they're stuck in dwell at your dock. Today, our guest is Mark LeGrand from Dock411, and he is going to give us the 411 on their app. That's the information, folks, and he is going to tell us how it plays into being a shipper of choice. Mark is on the line now. Let's bring him on the air. Hi, Mark. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Hi, Tim. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation to join you.
Folks, a little background on Mark. He is a graduate of Mid-State Technical College. He's worked for GE Capital Fleet Services, ARI. He's been a sales and leadership coach. And now he is the VP of Sales for Dock411, a program that I absolutely love. It's like Yelp for truckers. But Mark, you could probably do a better job of describing it. Tell me, what is Dock411?
Great question. And actually, your analogy is one we get an awful lot from customers and prospects saying, is it similar to Yelp? And in some ways, it certainly is. But where it differentiates a little bit is Dock411 is a platform, Tim, that provides location information on a facility that a shipper has, including over 70 attributes such as parking, restroom availability, and so forth, where the driver can put in reviews, and then off of that information, the shipper will get analytics that they're able to review and decide what action, if any, they need to take to improve the, I guess I would call it the overall experience from a customer standpoint, like Yelp, for that professional driver that's at their facility being loaded or unloaded. What's kind of different is the information is accessible in an unbiased format and not siloed at all. And by that, I mean, a lot of companies are out there today trying to capture some of this data, maybe in their own systems. But what we found and what we heard is that information's inconsistent or fragmented. And frankly, sometimes it might even be unreliable. So we're trying to be an industry-wide service dedicated to addressing that problem for the professional drivers.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that about Yelp, and maybe that was a bit of a misnomer. Because now, I think to a lot of consumers, Yelp has a bit of a negative connotation because they've gotten in trouble for hiding reviews and pay to play and that kind of stuff. And where your platform is just a lot stronger is it would be like if Yelp had wait times for food or wait times for tables and all of that kind of analytics behind it, as well as exactly where to put your car, where to pick up your takeout and delivery. There's a lot of powerful back end on the site other than just a bunch of reviews about shippers' docks. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on a key differentiator between us and a Yelp for the consumer is that we don't hide any negative reviews. If the information's out there that somebody had an experience that was less than ideal, many times we just ask the shipper to be open-minded and have awareness to it. It might have been something that occurred, weather-related or whatever, that caused longer than average load time to occur for one of the drivers at their facility. But whatever the data is, don't run from it, embrace it, and then act upon it accordingly.
We talked about your background. What made you decide to join up with Dock411? Relatively new company, but they're getting a lot of traction, named in the Freight Tech 25. One of the few programs out there that are really enabling truckers to give them that power, and you kind of came at a great time. 2018, with the capacity crisis, for example, a lot of drop loads, Shippers had to be smart about who they went with carriers, but carriers had to be even smarter about whose docks they went to make up for the time that they were losing.
Right. Well, and thanks for the question, because it was a shift or a pivot from my background as a whole, but there was one consistency that Dock411 had that tied to my past, and I genuinely want to try to help people. And so if there's a way that information or data can help somebody go to another level, bring them awareness, as I stated before, to whatever the current circumstances are and have a plan or a way forward for improvement, that's what I want to be part of. And I got an invitation from the team here at Dock411 to sit down, kind of learn a little bit about them. I didn't have a lot of logistics or transportation background. I've been in the vehicle fleet management business and had a lot of experience in that area. But what they shared that they were doing and trying to help people really aligned with what I'm passionate about. Just getting the word out about there are alternatives, there are solutions. Would you like to sit down and have a conversation about it? If you decide there's a fit or not, that'll help you reach your goals, that solves your challenges in your world and has value to you. That's what I want to be part of. And that's the whole mantra of the Dock411 team.
I imagine meeting Dan, too, one of the co-founders of the company, was a great sell, because I don't know if any of the listeners have met Dan or met him online as I have, but he's kind of a breath of fresh air. He's a very straight-talking, down-to-earth guy who really knows his stuff, but doesn't throw a bunch of fluff or confetti in the air when he speaks. He's just a straight shooter, and that's really, I just find him so endearing.
What's up, America? I'm Dano from Dock411.
Take me step by step. Like, when you log into an app, what do you see, and what are your options right out of the gate?
There's a satellite view of the map.
Inevitably, they're going to be, like, these issues are just going to suck, right? Let's just call spade a spade.
Yeah.
Inside.
Yeah. Hey.
Right. What are your hours?
Yeah. Get on that phone right now.
Drop your pager.
Yeah.
Right. And certainly that was a big selling point for me after having a chance to sit down with Dan. He is direct, but in a soft way. And by that, I mean, he's very curious. He's very inquisitive, likes to listen to the responses of what he's asking the people that he's sitting with. And you always know where you stand with him. He's just a straightforward, direct, but again, in a very polite, almost old school way. He's just a breath of fresh air, as you stated, to be around. And this whole idea of the Dock411 platform was Dan's. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Since you know a bit of the history, this is a great lead into the question I was kind of curious about, and it's this. I want to know who the main user of the app is, because it seems like it would definitely be designed for, the carrier, or maybe even more granularly, the trucker. Is that really your primary user base, or are shippers also adopting it? Or are the actually owner-operators adopting it as well? Or has it still stayed in that sort of trucker ecosystem?
No, great question, because it is something that can be confusing because we have multiple ways to access the information. But the direct answer to your question is there's benefits for all three user groups. But if you don't mind, let me take a little bit of a step back and talk at a higher level and maybe a deeper sense of, what we're trying to do here at Dock411. It's a little maybe corny, to be candid, but one of our kind of mission statements, so to speak, and every organization will talk about them. But ours is, we like to say, just like our founding fathers did in the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all three parts of the transportation ecosystem, starting with that professional driver, and then the carrier, broker, 3PL, owner-operator, and then ultimately the shipper-receiver, deserve to be treated with respect and provided with impactful information to help them succeed, not only in their business, but in their lives. So the app is really for the driver or the carrier, broker, 3PL, owner-operator, and also a website version. Same thing for the shipper. And then we have API technology, of course, where we can do an electronic interface, high end, that really connects then to the carrier world and the shipper world, giving them real-time visibility to their data.
I agree, and I like your approach here of bringing all three together. Because traditionally, they kind of seemed at odds, the shipper and the carrier and the trucker and the warehouse. So you had you had the high level of operations and then the people actually performing the job. And it was this sort of very transactional relationship. And there wasn't a ton of data on either side on who it was you were using, who was going to show up at your dock, and more importantly for the carriers, what kind of docks they were going to show up at. That's rapidly changing, especially with, a couple of advancements, right? ELDs and the capacity crisis, they defined 2018. And initially, and this is a funny one because this is like the law of unintended consequences, but initially all the carriers were bellyaching about ELDs. It was going to cut into hours of service, or it was going to make them obey the law. And, it was this big scourge of the industry. But a funny thing happened. The smart carriers realized that they could now instantly pull that dwell time data and that traffic time data and have these really powerful analytics on who was and wasn't making a great partner.
Absolutely right. And that's again about the awareness through the ELD technology. Everybody's getting visibility to time lost. And I like to just keep it simple for the professional driver. Miles are money. Simply put, the more miles they're driving, the more they can make. And that's important to them, of course, to help them feed their families and so forth. For the carriers, one of the biggest issues and challenges out there is driver retention. And so if they now have visibility to shippers that have excessive detention or dwell times, they may steer clear of those locations. They may charge more because of it, but it's the same as the driver. They're not getting as many miles driven, and that's costing them. And then, of course, because of those two perfect storms kind of happening together, the shipper ends up with a capacity issue, higher freight costs, and so forth. And according to the Department of Transportation, last year, collectively, the detention time robbed drivers of over $1 billion in income.
Wow.
In 1 year. And that detention also hurts the for-hire motor carriers by over $250 million, probably as high, according to the same study by the DOT, as $302 million because of lost miles while they're just sitting there detained at a facility unnecessarily.
Well, and of course, those times that they're being detained, they also show up in the market. They show up on the DAT board. They show up in these drastic rate increases that we were seeing last year because a truck that's stuck at a dock is out of capacity. Mm-hmm. And the longer they're in dwell time, the more all of us have to pay to move our freight.
Exactly. And as I like to tell my son and daughter, everything that you see in a store, whether it's a grocery store, a mall, doesn't matter. It comes and gets delivered by a trucker.
What is the truck driver's experience like at most of these shipping docks?
Well, the experience that we're seeing that they're having, frankly, is less than ideal. As a whole, collectively, the review information we're getting back shows that they are detained longer periods of time than they expected in advance, or they were told that a wait time would be an hour. It turned out to be 3 hours. And if that's not enough, Tim, then in turn, there's these accommodations they'd like to participate in, like normal functions. I need to use a restroom, no restroom available. I'm almost at the end of my hours of service. Is there parking on site, close by, and so forth, so I can help, the next day planning? No, there's no parking. So unfortunately, because of the unknown that most of these drivers are having before they get to a facility, it's been less than an ideal experience for them. I kind of liken it if you or I hop on a plane, we go to Denver, and we're driving out to Breckenridge Resort. And we get on our app and we see that looks like some slow traffic 8 miles ahead. Everybody's slowing down. There's an accident. Everybody's okay, but everybody's gawking at that, and we're able to get through. it's informational. It's good to have, but kind of so what at the end of the day. But let's say that same situation, and instead of an accident, it's what happened earlier this week. There's an avalanche and the road is closed for a couple days. Now you got to decide, am I going to put more fuel in the vehicle? Do I buy snacks? Do I reroute? What are my options? That's what professional drivers are looking for, is impactful information that'll help them before they even get to one of the shipper facilities.
Yeah, it's a tough role for them because you come to a place that just sort of culturally, a lot of docks treat truckers like they're this sort of underclass. Through the data that you guys pull in, do you have, what is the average review or what is the median review that you're seeing just across the board docks receiving?
We scale on a 1 to 5, and 5 being, of course, fantastic. We certainly have a number of facilities that consistently are at a 5, driver after driver, because they've taken an approach for a driver-centric initiative, providing information in advance, opening up the restrooms, parking, things like that are important to a professional driver. But as a whole, it's average. And if you look at most marketing survey companies on a 1 to 5 scale, if you're a 3 or less, you're at risk of losing that customer. And that's what carriers are starting to do with this information that they now have about dwell time, is they're saying more than ever, is it even worth my time, my employees' time and so forth, to go there and even load or unload out of that shipper facility because of the review information I'm seeing.
Yeah, and with that ELD data, as good as it is with dwell times, it's still a tough decision for carriers to turn down business. So having these reviews actually allows them to put some context behind it. So if you have long dwell times at a dock, then you look on Dock411 and see the review and it says, Tommy at the receiving dock is a bonehead. Jenny in financial wants a check on site. We end up in dwell times for hours over here. It allows the carrier to have some understanding of why. And it's not just because the dock was too busy that day. It's actually a systemic of a long-term chronic problem at a certain facility, which makes for bad partnerships.
Oh, absolutely. And to validate that a little further, and not just from the data that we own and see, but Landline Magazine late last year, they released a survey result that they did with carriers, and 80% of carriers stated there are now facilities that they will absolutely not load out of anymore because of excessive dwell times or how they treated their employees. Because again, the turnover being so tremendous in the professional driver market, it costs, depending upon who you believe number-wise, $8,000 to $10,000 to recruit, hire, and onboard a new driver. And so look at the cost to the carrier world for that. So it's more important than ever that they treat their employees in a way that says, well, I respect you. I want to make sure you're there at the shortest amount of time at the facilities you go to. And if you know there's a habitual location that's a problematic spot where you can steer clear of and get these people out rolling and making more money, that's where you're going to send them instead.
Yeah, and you mentioned a great point here. Trucking is a business with near 100% turnover. And you just said it costs $8,000 to replace a trucker, 100% turnover. Last year it was 98%. It either goes a little bit above 100, a little bit under. And that means that if a carrier has 100 employees, they have to hire 100 new ones within a year because 100 are gone. That's pretty insane if you think about it. But there's a lot of problems beyond just $8,000 that arise from that. It means that you have employees, truckers, that have information on docks that probably aren't being listened to because they're coming in and out so quickly. So maybe truckers have some understanding of good dock, bad dock, but it's usually not them who are deciding to pick up the load. It's their carrier dispatching them. But now, something like Dock411, it gives some tangibility. And instead of just whispers between truckers in a break room, there's actually this entire platform for them to look at from a higher level and make these decisions.
Absolutely. And, Most of the people that invite us in to have a conversation in the shipper world specifically, they tend to be warehouse managers, shipping manager, various titles, but they're on the operational team or they're on the financial team. They could be the CFO, VP of finance, and so forth. And what we're hearing from them, no matter what product they make, so from steel pipe companies that work with us to building product companies to food and beverage and also dairy, big spaces that we're part of, they look at this, Tim, and they say, the end of the day, we got to focus in on our costs. We got to manage our costs. But what we're making for a reason. We're in a business to make money. So it should be a revenue generating activity. But from a people standpoint, with these truck drivers and the churn, as you stated, the turnover rate near 100%, how can I make sure that I'm able to retain those people and not have to experience all this hiring and revolving door that's going on? And oh, by the way, I still have this thing called a customer who wants everything yesterday. So how do I look at this strategically and not just tactically and day to day and just try to get done what I can get done and tomorrow's another day mentality? The carriers that we work with are going to that strategic level and saying, how can I focus in on the hidden costs of the time value that I'm losing, the opportunity cost of the miles I'm not driving that I'm losing, the safety aspect that I have maneuverability issues at an older warehouse in the Chicagoland area built after World War II, and I can't really get around that yard very easily. So I have physical damage claims, or there was freezing rain and my driver stepped out of the cab. God damn it! To figure out where he's even supposed to go, who he's supposed to talk to, and unfortunately he slips and goes right on his back.
You okay?
And now you got workman's comp claims. So the people that are looking at this strategically and forward thinking are really trying to wrap their arms around each of those buckets, if you will. And they're the ones that, although the driver doesn't have a say, they have a major voice in the overall satisfaction level that the carrier's chasing after, because we feel and hear that they care more than ever about the employee base and they don't want the rapid turnover that they're experiencing.
Does good doc, bad doc defy financial lines and industry lines? Are there good docs at the smallest of shippers and the biggest ones, and bad docs within both? Or do you see any trend lines in certain industries are better or worse than others? Or does it doesn't matter? It can be terrible at either place.
It can be terrible at either place, certainly. I like to look at it, all of us, no matter what we do, what we endeavor to be, we can improve upon our current situation. We can get healthier. We can, do a lot of things better. And so certainly certain docks could be better than what they are today. Industry-wise, there are some groups, I would say, are getting more of a black eye than others. And right now, you can just look at a host of publications in the industry that are pointing strictly and straightly at the grocery store business. Fair or unfair, the amount of time that it takes to load or unload at any of the major grocery store chains is really a concern for the carriers and their drivers. And that you can find by just looking on the internet. That is the one industry that probably needs the most help and assistance right now.
Mark, there's probably a lot of shippers who are listening to this right now, and they're probably rolling their eyes and they're thinking, oh, great, yet another way for the carrier to screw me or to put him at odds. But I think you and I can maybe put them at ease, because this can definitely be used to benefit them, right? Because there's a thing called shipper of choice. And it's a curious thing because it's not fully defined, but it's pretty logical. And it's like things you mentioned, right? Have bathroom facilities available, have good dock times, try to give them parking if it's available. But ultimately what the carriers care about most is don't hold them up for excessive amounts of time. So with something like this, if you're getting good reviews and truckers are using it and carriers are using it, the benefit to you is that now you are more likely to not have your loads dropped, and you're more likely to be able to leverage partnerships when it comes contract time. It's like, look, all of our docks are 4 and 5 stars. With the amount of time we save you versus the market, our rate should be here versus here. And any smart negotiator would bring that to the table when talking to the carriers. And it's something shippers have to understand, because this tool also isn't just about reviews. As you mentioned, there's other features than just that. And one of the ones I saw that seemed really cool was for the shippers, they can put exactly where the trucker is supposed to go for pickups, right? They can give them that detail, and they can make themselves an even better shipper of choice by leveraging this digital technology.
Absolutely. And everything starts and ends with better communication. The old adage, you can't manage what you can't measure. So a lot of times shippers, they look at this shipper of choice and they go, well, I have no idea. I don't know how to get there. I don't know where to start. And they kind of overcomplicate it. They look at trying to bite off more than they need to just start, to just simply start going down the path of trying to improve the driver experience when they come to their facility or warehouse. So that said, if they have the analytics, which are available certainly in our platform, they can sit down with their carrier partners and negotiate better freight rates, ask for those additional costs that the carrier experienced in the past, especially if they show trending towards improvement of reduced dwell times for the carrier. Take the costs out. Help me help you. I've done what I can. Now I need your help in return. And we're hearing more and more success stories of where people are able to negotiate lower rates because they've gone down the path of truly trying to be a shipper of choice.
Yeah, you bring up another good point here. There's always that sort of bellyaching. I don't know how to be a shipper of choice. It's too tough. But, that's not really true, because 80% of becoming a shipper of choice is really, really simple, fundamental things. All you need to do is clean up your bathroom and leave it unlocked for truckers. Have a break room or cordon off an area, put a table out and put a Wi-Fi receiver near there so they have some place to just chill out and relax. They're going to give you a better review and they're going to want to come back. And make sure your dock is efficient. I mean, these are things that you're already doing, and you should always be trying to improve your own dock efficiency. So if a carrier is saying that your dock is inefficient, that should worry you if you're the CEO or the CFO or in charge of operations at a company. Why is that? Why are people saying about that about us? And how much money is it costing us by being this inefficient? It doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a huge digital platform to start out. It may mean you have to invest in some employees to start if that's the reason your dock is slow. Or it may mean that you have to have some new training or some different procedures. You might need a janitor for that bathroom or that break room, but it's really not super high level stuff just to get started on the right path.
Right. I mean, if you look back, somebody gave me this example years ago, in the 60s, NASA, through the push of President Kennedy, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of this decade.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
And if you think about it, just what a huge goal that was. A man on the moon by the end of this decade, and then everything that goes into your mind, no matter how smart you are, how am I going to do it? How am I going to get there? How do I go simply from here to there? And if you look at it in the biggest sense, it seems insurmountable, a man on the moon. But what NASA did was really simple. And they said, let's break it down to three things only: navigation, propulsion, and life support. And then we'll have teams within each of those three buckets, and we'll be on the moon. And we were. The same for the shipper. Instead of overcomplicating things, you hit it on the head, Tim. If their restrooms are dirty, clean them. If they don't have enough staff to answer questions or direct and facilitate a driver when they get to your facility, get somebody that can help you do that. So just having awareness to where there's gaps in the expectation and doing the best you can to close those gaps will help you go down the path of becoming a shipper of choice. And by that, I mean also, you don't have to be perfect. We're hearing and seeing that if the shipper is at least trying and making an effort about caring for the dwell time or detention time that the carrier and driver has at their facility and trying to find ways to improve upon that, they're tolerant of it. They're at least willing to give time to go down that path instead of being one of the 80% where they say we're never going to load out of them anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to be a proverbial Olympic high jumper. If you can jump over a puddle, you can start doing some of these improvements because they're not tough. And if you want to be a 5-star shipper, you want to really get that 5-star and you want to be the best partner. That's when we're really starting to talk about these sort of digital tenders and digital technology. And that's really going to help you out. But this simple fundamental stuff, it's not rocket science to talk, to bring it back to NASA.
We met with somebody recently and they looked at us, and of course, from a sales standpoint, we're thinking we hit it out of the park. They really loved what they heard. And she took a pause and she goes, so basically this is simple blocking and tackling like football. And we took a breath and we're like, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what this is. It's the basics that once they're tracked and measured, give you a way forward of how to become better so that you can truly become a shipper of choice.
So we talk about the Freight 25, we talk about Dock411. What risks are carriers and shippers exposing themselves to by ignoring these changes and ignoring these ways that their partners are now communicating?
Well, starting because we look again at all three pieces of the transportation ecosystem. So I don't want to exclude the professional driver. If we don't go down this path of truly trying to improve communication and providing impactful information before a professional driver even gets to a facility, one, it costs them money. It's money out of their pocket, which leads to, I can just go work somewhere else for the same amount of money, less headaches, less travel. And even though I'm passionate and love what I do, it's just not worth it anymore. So it may just simply stop the churn there. Two, the carrier, they want to make more money. So the more miles that driver is driving, the better for them, their organization, the less accident claims, the less workman's comp claims, compliance issues and the like. And then the shipper is less cost, less insurance costs on them also. It's just a win-win-win scenario when all three are working in unison. And if they're not, as we talked earlier, you're going to have more capacity crunch and concerns as a shipper that all of a sudden your cost structure is going to get so high and then price to your competitors' products in the marketplace, because you got to put that in somewhere. It's going to impact you and domino to what your entire market share is.
Yeah, anyone who's been around a warehouse or been around transportation or even been around more traditional brokers, carriers, knows that this field a lot of times can be very dogmatic and it can be very, the reasoning can be very emotional. There are companies that lose serious amounts of money because their receiving guy had an issue with one carrier the one time he tried to bring something. And the nice thing about technology is that for the people making these financial decisions, it removes the emotion out of it. And it gives some context to time and delays and why things are happening beyond someone just thinking someone else is a jerk or they didn't like one experience. It gives some actual real tangible reasoning instead of just somebody's word.
Right. I mean, somebody once said to me, feedback is just information. That's all it is. So the feedback and the reviews you get is information for you to act upon, brings you awareness, and it does take the emotion piece out since it's information. So from a review standpoint, you're able to look at the analytics and drive more effective business decisions. And again, back to the professional driver, because there can be emotion for that driver, we're able to show, well, Mark gave a review of 3 at this facility, what normally gets a 5-star rating. But, oh, look, Mark gives everybody a 3 or less. So you're able to actually look at
He's grading on a curve, right? The Mark curve.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So you're able to go behind the scenes and do a little deeper dive to what that information means to you and how best to respond to it.
So what's next for Dock411? You already have this great platform. You've gone to market with it. You're proliferating. Are any new features, anything you've heard feedback wise that you can tell us that you are excited about for 2019 with the program?
So, certainly a lot on the horizon for us. I guess I'd put it this way. We're going to be announcing some major partnerships in the next 30 days that are really going to be impactful, again, about providing information to other platforms, getting visibility to data, to other areas of the transportation logistics puzzle, so to speak. So we're really excited about that. So I'd say stay tuned, and those will be announced in 30 days or less. Secondly, we've got a new certification process going on. So we're taking the analytics of all this information, and it really dovetails nicely to your last question, Tim, about taking any of the subjectivity, the emotion out of it, and really what does the data mean? So we're working with a couple universities that are really known for statistical analysis, and they're helping us come up with a really robust, unique certification process that'll really take the measurement then to another level for both the carrier and the shipper when it comes to the pricing model to help them out in that area. And then lastly, we're rolling out a new product designed specifically for carriers. And by that, I mean, we already have the platform, but they may be siloed information, within their own TMS system and so forth. So we're doing location information, research review information, and then all the analytics off of that with a new carrier product that'll be out in 30 to 45 days. So a lot on the horizon for us.
We just upgraded our TMS. It has this new optimizer feature, and I was playing with it a whole bunch the other day and doing network models and simulations and all of the kind of, dorky things you do if you're into freight tech.
Right.
But one thing that would be super neat is if I could plug this Dock411 info in there too and get even more data on, is this a good pool, and let my system also factor in some of these ratings and these times from the analytics that your program is finding. Is there that kind of TMS connectivity yet?
Oh, absolutely. That's earlier I mentioned, the app, the internet or the web site, and then API. So this would be an excellent example where today, and it's not 30, 45 days out, today we're live and we're interacting with a host of TMS systems where we're cross-pollinating and providing information to each other. So certainly it's something that we are doing and would love to talk to you a little further about.
Yeah, I'll have Chris, our ops guy who handles that stuff, definitely get in touch with you because that is really exciting and powerful stuff.
Agreed.
So any plugs, contacts? People are hearing about Dock411. They think it's awesome. How do they find out more?
So as far as plugs, first of all, I'd like to thank you and the entire team at Aborn and Company. I'm relatively new, as stated at the beginning, to Dock411 in this industry as a whole. And people like me need to be a sponge and grow and learn and and reach out and lean into people that, are talking about and sharing things that are timely topics or issues and concerns. And you and your organization certainly do that. So I want to thank you for not only doing it, but providing a path for people like me to help navigate and understand these situations a little bit more. So I just want to say thank you for all you guys do.
Oh, well, you're welcome, Mark.
And I mean that.
And hold on, let me say one thing, because I think that you may be relatively new, but I think some of your answers were some of the quickest, the sharpest, and the best that I've received from guests who've had years of experience. So great job, Mark.
Right.
Even if you're faking it till you make it, you fooled me.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Contact information. Go to the website, dock411.com. Overview is there for shippers, carriers, drivers. All the information from A to Z is there. And of course, any other questions there, my contact information is. Feel free to reach out, and welcome to have a conversation with anybody about it.
That's great. That's great, Mark. And I encourage you to do that. Mark is a super friendly guy, very easy to talk to. He's also on LinkedIn. It's Mark LeGrand. You can look him up over there. Start a conversation if you want to bring on this platform, or go to dock411.com, as he mentioned.
Fantastic.
Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I really enjoyed learning more about Dock411. It's a great addition to this industry.
Thank you much, Tim. And I wish you guys continued success, and thanks for the opportunity to be your guest today.
Looking to take control of your freight and future-proof your supply chain? Get ready for tomorrow today with A. Bourne & Company's Advantage Modern Managed Freight Solutions. Find out how we've combined traditional freight management fundamentals with data and technology to help companies reduce freight costs, improve carrier service, and bring visibility to their supply chains. Visit A. Bourne & Co. now to set up a complimentary consultation. Isn't it time you got optimized? Speaking of reviews, if you like this episode and want to give back, there's two ways. Share it, of course, and head on over to Apple Podcasts over there and leave a review. No Dock411 required for this one. That's it. We're out of time. For Mark LeGrand and Dock411, I'm Tim Dooner, saying take care and happy shipping.
Don't let him no more.
Well, I will dress him in whatever you're wearing.
It was